Welcome to Live Action Star Wars Presents Data Link. This is our second episode. I'm Ralph.
I'm James.
And today we are discussing the book and just in general, exploring Tatooine. And we have the author of that book, Riley Silverman, and
the recently announced book, Exploring Tatooine.
Right,
Hello.
which comes out in
Riley.
August. Hello.
August.
Yeah.
We were chatting up about Tatooine. And I have the pages here that we can take a look at that were on the recent press release at StarWars.com.
Yeah, I should probably look it up myself in case you have any questions on things. I wrote this book like almost a year
ago.
I'm
going to have it for all of. I'm going to have it for all of us.
Okay, great.
This is me. James and I have tried to tackle getting these PDFs to work, and we've got
for other things.
We finally got it to work, so I'll be able to scroll through these pages.
Oh, cool.
But first,
for behind the scenes, like normally when we've tried to pull things up in the past, it's always been sideways. No matter what we've tried, it's always been a 90-degree angle to the wrong direction. No matter what we try and do.
Right. And let me just double check too, because
we're good.
Okay,
we're good.
Yeah. Okay, we're good. So we were just talking, and when this book was announced, everybody seemed excited on your feed, as you mentioned, but in the main Star Wars feed, when they announced it, people were kind of giving shit about it being Tatooine again.
Yeah.
And so here's the deal. Anybody that watches the show knows I do not read. I can read. I just am not. I'm just not a
reader.
The
good news is for you then, this book is full of pictures, so you can actually look at the nice, pretty pictures and have someone read it to you.
So this is a real conversation that happened yesterday with James. I said, let's make sure we read the press release and be prepared for the show. I said, I really don't want to read. I really don't want to read. And he told me, Ralph, just focus on the pictures.
Yeah, huge. It's like you take care of the art, I'll take care of the words. We're good.
This is huge. This is huge. I'm so excited to have you here. I read every single word of the 4 pages they put on StarWars.com.
Nice.
I don't know what it is. I read comics, which is reading, but there's something, and I don't know. Anyway.
I know I don't want to go too far into pathologizing you or diagnosing you on a live feed, but have you had this checked out as a possible learning disability that you might have? That like I don't know if you're dyslexic or not, but or maybe you have an issue with all the words pushed together and your brain's not processing it properly.
A couple of things is that when I read a novel, when I get through a paragraph in my brain, I'm like I feel like I missed something, and so I go back and reread it. I haven't gotten it diagnosed because I kind of am fine with not reading.
Okay, fair.
And I feel bad because I love the James Bond movies. I've been a fan for a long time, and I always wanted to read the books. As problematic as they are, I understand that. But thanks to audiobooks.
I was going to say, have you tried the audiobooks?
So much, I feel like it's cheating.
No, I think whatever your most comfortable way of consuming a piece of art is the way you should do it. I think there's a weird stigma some people have about audiobooks, but I feel like it's only people who actually like audiobooks who give it that stigma. I'm more of a reader. Audiobooks don't work for me. I have the exact opposite issue that you have, where I will have 3 minutes of an audiobook go by, and then I'm like, oh, did I miss everything that just happened in that thing? And I'll have to listen to it again. It's a
funny win, because I used to drive for a living, so I would listen to audiobooks. Pretty much that was my main way of consuming all the books that I would read.
Were you a transporter?
No. But it wasn't security.
Lots of Vivaldi.
So the Brinks Max trucks, the security trucks. I used to drive one of those.
Right.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I used to listen to audiobooks all the time. And now I sit in a security room and I don't go anywhere. So I read all the time. I'm constantly reading, but I'm consuming the written word. And it's weird. I think I read probably more now than I did then. But now when I listen to an audiobook, I've got that same thing where it's I'll listen to a page worth and then I'll be like, oh shit, what just happened?
Yeah.
And I'm like, It's different. Sometimes something will grab me, and I think that comes down to like the narrator of an audiobook, definitely.
Yeah, for me, I can do a podcast where there's a conversation happening, and I can do like I drove across the United States twice in 2020, once from LA to Ohio. I spent the summer with my family in Ohio and then back, and I basically listened to episodes of Critical Role on their podcast.
Good long episodes. Yeah, I was
they're
gonna say
like 4 hours each.
Yeah.
I would drive about 12 hours a day, so I would get about 3 episodes in each day. And the only times that I really found myself fading when I was doing that mentally was when they would get into like combat scenes. There's a lot of like nitty gritty back and forth, and it's hard to like listen to. But yeah, sorry, I know this is like not the topic of this episode, but
it's
still the thing.
Yeah, it's still book related. I think, yeah. This is good. This is what Data Link's all about. Data Link is a free form conversation where we can talk about everything. We just like having guests on.
Yeah. I have my sister's in the chat, and she says she doesn't know why we weren't raised to like reading.
Oh, so my mom, interesting.
Yeah. My mom used to read. Like every birthday we would get her a Danielle Steele novel.
You're half reader on your mom's side.
Yeah, maybe
that's it.
Yeah, my mom was a big reader. My mom loved like those like Mary Higgins Clark books and Danielle Steele, so she read those kind of things too. And then I was pretty encouraged at a young age to read, and also it was one of those things of like, hey, these things that you love, there's more of these things if you go to books, and so then I would go to books.
That's exactly what it was for me. So yeah, my mom was a big reader. So there was always books around. I always had sort of books given to me. But then for me, what got me into like properly into reading was Star Wars books.
Yeah.
I was born in 87, so 91 rolls around. My mum bought Heir to the Empire for my brother. And I don't know if he ever finished it, but he didn't. If he did, he wasn't a big reader, still isn't. But it was always around. So I picked it up and I started reading it. And then I kind of never stopped reading Star Wars books from then on.
It was that cover, right?
Of course it's that cover. Everyone knows that cover. That copy of that book is still like there.
I'm jealous just down on that shelf. Your first Star Wars book, because my first Star Wars book was Glove of Darth Vader, and I feel like that's why I don't have much of a love of Star Wars books of like expanded universe as some people do. But I will say that I have recently completely fallen in love with the High Republic series. I've read everything in the High Republic. I've read
literally.
Everybody. I've even read the kids, like the kids books that are retellings of the major novels. I'm still reading those.
Yeah, the illustrated ones are brilliant. They're great. Yeah. And Buryaga, God, pull one out, and hopefully not pull one out. But
my first Star Wars book was Heir to the Empire because I'm old. And that's
I mean, that was me too. That was my first. Yeah,
those are around the same time. Heir to the Empire and Glove of Darth Vader were around the same time. So
it was one of the first. Like
one was YA
ones,
and one was adult.
Yeah, that's it.
Damn.
It's the same time that Dark Horse were doing like Dark Forces and not Dark Force, Dark Empire.
Yeah.
So like you've obviously been a fan of Star Wars books for a long time.
Yeah.
Like you wrote a Star Wars book.
I know.
Like how crazy is that?
It's wild, and
how does that happen?
This is my question. Did you go to Lucas Arts or Lucas Books with the idea, or did they approach you?
No, so it was written. It's published by a publisher called Insight Edition, so it's a licensed publisher. It's a licensed book. It was still so Lucasfilm. I mean, Disney has a publishing department, but they also spread a lot of their stuff out through various different publishers. Cool. So there's like Del Rey does a lot of the novels. There's also like obviously Marvel does the comics, but there are occasionally still Dark Horse comics here and there.
Yeah, they've just gone back to Dark Horse, haven't they?
Or I guess not Dark Horse anymore. I think IWD does the adventure.
IDW had them until recently. I think that was last year. They just lost their license, and it's going back to Dark Horse. The stuff that IDW was doing, it's gone back to Dark Horse. Yeah,
I did not know. So the Adventures book will be through Dark Horse again. That's interesting. I just got a huge stack of Dark Horse Star Wars comics given to me, and I'm excited to go through them and look.
Randy Stradley, the old editor there, was so good with the community. Like that was for most of the 2000s. I was reading everything, and he was always active in like forums and things like that. And he was like the main editor. So hopefully he's back involved. And he was a great guy.
Right, so you'll see like a lot of the like the visual dictionary books that come out of like DK books and things like that. And then this is Insight. And so Insight has done a lot of like the tech manual style books and the cookbooks and some of those kind of children's book things. So that's who reached out to me. So I had talked about Star Wars a lot on various media, a like as you do. And my editor at Insight reached out to me directly and said, hey, like, I had an email that came to me through my manager almost a year ago. It was on April 11th last year, and I was actually sitting in this spot, and I was doing a podcast recording with my friends, and we were taking a break, and I checked my email during the break, and I had an email that said, forward, Riley Silverman, possible Star Wars project, ? And then I died.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'm dead now. I died that moment, and and I have been.
And then the rest of the podcast didn't continue.
Right. It was unfortunate. Everyone grieved me. But now I'm living this world where I've invented a reality where I have written Star Wars book. So
that's so cool. I mean, that's the dream. So again, this is me being completely ignorant to everything. You were already writing. You had other things out there. You had an editor. You had a publisher, sort of thing.
So no, actually this publisher, this was my first contact with this publisher.
Okay.
I have a manager for film and TV writing. That's who they reached out to.
Okay, cool.
I have written for a number of websites, and I'm a writer on a regular podcast that's a twice monthly podcast that I write for. And I have film scripts and stuff like that. This is my first book that is like my book. Like I have some essays that are going to be published in Karen Hallian book coming out this year called She Series. So that was like, maybe that might be my first published work in print, like if it comes out before the Star Wars book does. But the Star Wars book is the first, like, this is my
your
book.
Yeah, that's awesome.
In Tatooine, I
mean, what a great book to start with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recently got a tattoo on my arm. It's not gonna play as well on screen, I don't think, but I got because the red doesn't play as well, but it's the Jedi logo and the Rebel Starbird, and I got them and I posted them, and it's kind of hard to tell in the picture, but I actually did them on purpose to be the twin sons of Tatooine.
That's great. Yeah,
and that is. And eventually I'm going to get the Starbird filled in to be more like the setting red sun, like to have that kind of color palette to it. Right. And exactly the reason why I picked that, I wanted to do the Rebel Starbird for a while, and I wanted to like figure. And then when this book came along, I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to commemorate this book? And I was like, this is the first time that as a lifelong Star Wars fan that I'm getting to create my own content that is Star Wars like official, and it's like I'm contributing something to this world that has given so much to me over my life. I want to find a way to commemorate that, and that's how the idea of doing I was like, oh, maybe I'll do the twin suns, and I was like, well, if you just do the suns, it just looks like two circles in your arm, and no one understands what you're doing. So I was like, and at one point I was going to do the Jedi Order inside the Rebel Bird, but then I was like,
I've seen some very cool designs similar,
which is why I didn't do it. I was like, I've seen so many of that.
Exactly. I for a while before I got my Rebel insignia here, I saw it was a really nice like dot work piece of like the Lars Homestead with the twin suns in the background. Nice. It looked amazing. I was like, oh, I could get something similar to that. But I'm like, I've seen that. It's there. It's out there now. And I'm just like, at least this was like an existing piece, but it's like X-Wings flying through sort of thing. I'm like, that ticks all the boxes of things that I love. Like
I might one of these days do X-Wings coming up the arm past there. And I also might put the fulcrum symbol. I actually was going to do, before I wrote the book, I was going to do the Starbird with Ahsoka's Montrals and Leku like design on the blue and the white, and then have the like fulcrum symbol inside of that, or the Jedi symbol. But then
You're giving away all these ideas. You're giving people all these ideas now.
Well, then somebody had done essentially that with the fulcrum symbol on Etsy, and I actually messaged them at first and was like, "Hey, can I use your design for a tattoo?" And they were very cool and sent me the vector art or whatever. But after a while, I was like, "Well, that's their design. I don't want to." So then I ended up just buying the decal they were selling and putting on my car, and I was like, "Okay, that's a decal. Now what am I going to do for myself?" So, so that was basically they reached out to me. There was a few weeks of getting contracts figured out. And then actually the coolest thing not the coolest thing, but one cool thing was my first draft of my outline was actually due on May 4th. So it was kind of a fun little leading up to that week. And last year everyone's going May the 4th stuff. And I'm like, okay, tell anybody what I'm doing for May the 4th.
Yeah, I'd love
You've been sitting on it for a while.
I'm celebrating in a very different way.
I've been sitting on it for quite a while, and I've even done like panels about Star Wars on like virtual cons and even cons in person, and I haven't been able to mention why I'm on the panel. It's all right.
I was gonna say it makes sense, like Ralph saying it's been a while, and like you think about it, it's like that is quite a long lead time. But I'm guessing that you had everything pretty much written before any of the artwork was done. Was that
basically because they took what I wrote and gave what I wrote to the artists, and then they crafted the art based on what I wrote. So. it was like there was a couple like I think maybe like the cover art was done as like a mock-up before because I think they can kind of assume what's gonna be on the cover was Luke and R2 and you know ships. So, but yeah, for the most part, everything like nothing in that book. That cover is something you wouldn't expect to see in a book about Tatooine. So it's like, So, but like, for example, like Dr. Aphra is in this book because I wrote Dr. Aphra's name down and described her, and now she's in the book, which is like, like the first time I think Dr. Aphra and Ahsoka are both characters that I decided to use because they had been used because I was given permission to use anything from movies, the canon TV series. So basically the longer Clone Wars, the Rebels, Mandalorian, things like that. The book I wrote the book before Boba Fett, so I
was gonna say and before Obi-Wan as well.
Yeah, well Obi-Wan is not aired yet, so I definitely wrote it before Obi-Wan came out. Unfortunately, I did not get access to scripts for shows that had not aired yet. And amazing.
That was something that I wanted to ask as well because we're looking at the Obi-Wan page here and. Like in the opening things, you've sort of written it's like that for 19 years, Obi-Wan's been living here.
Yeah.
And just from that trailer, I mean, I'm guessing that you've not seen any more than we have, like at this point. Like, it's like, was he there for 19 years? We don't know yet. As
excited as I am for the show, when that happened in the trailer, I'm like,
like, it's too late to do any edits.
But I mean, we did manage to slip in one reference to Boba Fett early on, like, because part of the problem is like, the publishing takes a long time. It's a very long, slow process. And when you're doing licensed stuff, especially, there's a lot of approvals that have to get done. So like there was no way we would have been able to get new art commissioned for things that happened in Boba Fett and then have those approved and then have them be ready for publishing. Yeah, so like there's a mention of something in Boba Fett that's in the book, but like I do kind of wish that I could have gotten access to the Boba Fett stuff earlier because I would have loved to have included the. And this is gonna be controversial, but it's a book for kids. I would have loved to have included the mod racer, like the mod punks. Like I think
they're
what
a better thing to have now. Like they
kids than colorful scooters with people with droid parts. That is cracked for children, and I wish that.
And it's also now it's established now, like it or not, that is a part of the culture, the youth culture of Tatooine, or at least of Mos Eisley and Mos Espa sort of thing. Like they are there.
And I think it does flow naturally from the previous pod racing culture. I think having a hot rod culture that develops out of that makes a lot of sense to me.
On this podcast, we are fans of the mod speeder gang.
Yeah. Right. Oh, and to answer the question that was asked of me by the chat, you popped it up on screen for a second from
Rick.
Unfortunately I was not allowed to slip in anything that wasn't already canon into this book. In fact, like I very much was dealing with the I don't think it was the actual story core, but I had a person at Lucasfilm that my editor would send things to after I wrote them to make sure that they were actually canon. Like one thing I learned, I was operating under the assumption that things that were in the certain point of view book were considered canon, but they apparently are not according to Lucasfilm.
Interesting.
So, or maybe it's like in flux. Maybe it depends on like here or there.
Depends on if they get used.
Yeah. So I had like, for example, I had put in the detail from the book that R2 had convinced R5 to self-sabotage in order to let him continue his mission. That's from that book, and that was something that was like, I got a note like, hey, let's not use this because it's only in this one book, and we're not sure if this book's canon. So,
that's really interesting.
Was there anything you did put in the book where Lucasfilm was like, oh, you can't have that in there because
we have plans,
possible future storylines, nothing like that?
No, the only thing close to that, I think, would be there was a little bit of like concern over language and description of when and where Luke built his green lightsaber, because there's like versions of it from Legends that might not be considered canon now.
I was going to say Shadows of the Empire has a version of it, and there's the deleted scene on of Return of the Jedi that they both have a version.
Yeah. And so the response I got to that is like that detail is in flux. So I think like they haven't decided officially what the canon of that is.
Fair.
So and it wasn't even like so much take this out as much as like maybe be a little more vague with this or describe it differently.
Right.
So that was
And now with the new CGI Luke looking better than ever, I mean, they can play that scene however they want.
Yeah. Or they could just use the footage from Return of the Jedi if they really wanted to. Like,
right.
Yeah, it exists. It's there.
Yeah.
But if they decided that they wanted to have him back in Obi-Wan's hut, as he was, I believe, in Shadows of the Empire, where he's putting it together.
Which
like,
I had a question.
They could do that now.
Yeah, but I was able to use, like, for example, all the stuff in the comics of like Luke finding Obi-Wan's journals and things like that. So
and the Boba Fett fight. Yeah, the Boba Fett fight here, and yeah, it's great.
That's a question I had as a non-reader of Star Wars was, when did that happen?
It happens in the first run of I think it's Kieran Gillen's era of the Star Wars main book, and essentially what has happened is Darth Vader has commissioned Boba Fett. Obi-Wan's dead. Darth Vader has commissioned. If Darth Vader commissioned Obi-Wan, that's a very different story, and that's a different deal. Darth Vader has commissioned Boba Fett to find the pilot responsible for Death Star. He doesn't know yet that it's Luke Skywalker.
I believe even it's Boba Fett and Black Chrysanthemum. I believe.
Yeah, they're
both of them, but it just happens to be that Boba Fett. For credit's sake, I think that was Jason Aaron.
You're right. I think
Kieran Gillen was on Darth Vader at the time, and it was Jason Aaron writing.
So there's a bit of an overlap in those two.
Both those stories happen.
That's happening in Darth Vader, and it all like Darth Vader's side of it's happening in the Darth Vader comics. Boba Fett's side's happening in Star Wars. So yes, thank you for giving the
credit. Afra was a Kieran Gillen creation.
Yes,
was Dr. Afra. Yeah.
And that Dr. Afra is happening in that Darth Vader era. Yeah. So, but long story short, so Boba Fett and Luke they meet each other at Kenobi's hut, and they have a fight, and then it's actually Luke gets away, obviously, and then it's actually Boba Fett who tells Darth Vader that the pilot's name is Skywalker, and there's a really
the hut gets torched pretty badly in that fight. Like, it's kind of a wreck after that.
Yeah. And it's a great storyline, even those little bits of spoilers you haven't already read it. It's still a great little storyline to read through.
It's fantastic.
It sets off a great arc in Darth Vader's comics. So
when I saw that panel, that artwork with Luke and Boba Fett, I got super excited because it's not an outfit of Luke's that I've seen. It looks like the ceremony. Is it the yellow? Yeah. It's not the yellow jacket though. It's the outfit
that
under
shot.
the
It's
yellow
not,
jacket.
but in the comics, I think he is wearing the yellow jacket. Like the yellow jacket has to go to comics.
It's around there, yeah.
But I like that it's the ceremony outfit, but he's on Tatooine, so he's wearing a duster instead of the jacket.
You should check out that run, Ralph. It's very good.
It's very
like
good.
It. Yeah.
I'm just finishing up the era because basically, this book made me get really into eras of Star Wars comics I hadn't yet read, even things that weren't set on Tatooine. And I'm just about to finish the pre-Empire Strikes Back volumes of the Star Wars comic. And so, and I've already moved past it with Vader and with Afra, but I haven't moved past it with the main Star Wars book. So I'm excited for that.
So that's all the Rogue Squadron stuff. This
image of Afra here too, and the story underneath. I've heard of Afra, and I created an Afra outfit on Animal Crossing.
Oh, nice!
So I'm familiar with the character.
So we're very similar.
But I've never looked into her character at all.
Oh, you got to.
She's so good.
It is,
and also I know that she's an archaeologist. But this small bit of business that you wrote made me want to read more about her. She sounds awesome. We have the Vader, the first trait of Vader. That's
where she's introduced. Yeah. Of the first one of the Marvel run. Yeah.
So I'm gonna grab it off the shelf and read it because I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, you should.
I just knew she was an archaeologist, and now I'm like, oh, okay.
She's kind of like a Han Solo, an Indiana Jones type, isn't she? To begin with,
she's kind of a mix of Han Solo and Indiana Jones, and like I don't want to say she's dark side because I don't think she is, but she's kind of a reverse mirror of a lot of main Star Wars stuff. So like she's if Han Solo was more Indiana Jonesy and a little more scoundrelly, she's very much like looking out for herself, kind of a personal disaster of a character, but. The reason why I say she's kind of a reverse Star Wars is because she has an evil protocol droid, an evil astromech droid that work with her. She works with Chrysanthemum a lot, who's supposed to be like almost like an angrier Chewbacca, and so it's almost like a mirror universe of the main Star Wars group.
I mean, even their relationship is kind of like the opposite of Han and Chewie, where it's like Han and Chewie are inseparable. Her and Chrysanthemum will work together, but they also really hate each other and will double cross each other at any opportunity.
And there's also sort of an element of the Wookiee life debt involving Chrysanthemum and Afra, where like he hates that he has this life debt to her, and so he like sticks around her. At one point, she owes him money, so he like won't leave her alone because he wants to get his payback and stuff like that. So there's a lot of fun stuff like that.
I'm shocked we haven't seen her in live action yet.
I know. I think they're just waiting for the right way to use her. But and then
I
also,
think she's just going to get her own
run.
series. Like, to be honest, there's been casting in the past where everyone's been like, so this is Afra, right? They're casting for Afra, and then it's not turned out to be the case. But
well, my thing about
it's only a
Afra
matter
is
of
that
time.
she's canonically and very explicitly queer, and I'm wondering if they're not sure how they want to proceed with that in a series, because they don't want to. You can't cut that out of her character because so much of her story is disaster lesbian.
Very much,
romances,
yeah.
But there is. There's a droid, Ralph. You gotta read this book. There's a evil 3PO named 000 who is just like this.
His
absolute homicidal maniac of a protocol droid, and he's so much.
Is that
fun.
the black one with the red eyes?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just like the way he talks, he reminds me of. Did you ever play Old Republic? And you got like HK-47, who's just like referring to humans as meat bags and stuff like that. It's very much like that.
It's very HK-47 in terms of like just the disregard to anyone else, sort of. But like he's willing to work with them, but like also thinks so much less of anyone.
Yeah. Very fun.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. I'll read that Vader. We have the first trade.
Yeah.
The Vader, it's funny. I'm not normally very dark side oriented. I'm very light side. I'm a light side for lifer. But gosh, almost every Vader comic is great. Like
it's been the most consistent run, I think, of just sheer quality. It's been great from start to finish.
Yeah, it's like it gets into so much fun stuff with like the Sith side of Jedi mysticism and stuff like that, and
it ties the trilogies together nicely as well. With like currently we're getting a lot of Sabe, one of the handmaidens. And I mean even Rick Ollier popped up and this is like post Empire Strikes Back, so it's great seeing those characters popping up in this era and the original trilogy era.
And there's also a really great run. I'm making sure I have the right author. There's a run called Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, and it's all the stuff happening with Vader right after Episode 3 ends. So it's like him learning about his suit, and it's him beginning to like hunt down more Jedi.
I don't think I've read any of that run. Yeah,
there's a whole run where he like confronts Jocasta Nu, which is like very fun, and there's a whole lot going on with that. So I recommend that. I'm looking up because the problem is it's so hard to figure out which one is which.
Well, you can while you look it up, I'll pop this up and tell the George Lucas talk show. No, we're not. We're not going to be talking about Star Wars.
What's that?
One bit. We'll be talking about the wuzzles and the slap.
Covers are so hard. It's one of the authors that does the new he's doing
Charles. Here we go. I mean
Charles Soule. Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, I was like blanking. Thank you. Yes, Charles Soule. Because I was gonna say about villain writing. Charles Soule writes villains very, very well, and he writes villain-centric comics very well. Like
he writes everything. He writes everything really well. I'm currently reading. Literally, I just started yesterday. The Oracle Year, one of his actual novels, non-Star Wars novels. Started reading that yesterday. Charles Soule rules.
Yeah. He's one of those guys that, again, I don't read, but he's a great follow on Star Wars Twitter because he's super positive.
Yeah,
he's super positive.
So
Ralph run right now for
exactly.
He's such a good. Yeah,
he started the High Republic. His book Light of the Jedi was the first of the High Republic novels to come out, and it set the stage for that entire era so well. It introduced tons of characters in like what a lesser author would do in such an incomprehensible way. But he managed to handle it so well that it was brilliant.
He gave me the first third of that book is kind of the Jedi story I've always wanted to see, and it was so it's basically like a bunch of Jedi banding together and while a huge disaster is happening, and how are they going to help try to stop it.
It's a roller coaster.
It's a disaster movie that's happening. It is essentially a Roland Emmerich disaster film, but if they were Jedi, and it's so much fun to read through.
I really, really, and this is coming from me, really would like the High Republic to be turned into an animated series.
Because
everything I see and hear about it sounds great, And
it's
I know I'm
so
not an animated series guy.
It's so up your alley. It's very much your shit.
Yeah, you'll get the Acolyte. That's like the one thing that's being made as High Republic set. So
and potentially something else, like the show that is being like in pre-production. I think at the moment is heavily rumored to be a High Republic like younger audience sort of directed or lent sort of show. But yeah, in the High Republic. So
I'd be
fingers
happy
crossed.
to see that.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, definitely. Because they've done such a good job with
the High Republic. Even though my book had no High Republic stuff in it, as far as like I couldn't find any Tatooine stuff in the High Republic, but I will sing the praises of that entire series. And every one of the authors that worked on the original group and then the new group, it's just a fantastic bunch.
I mean, you talk about a diversity of authors and stuff. That's right there. That's great.
I'm mostly jealous of their weekend getaways.
I know, right?
They look great.
Their retreats, their writer retreats. Oh my gosh, they're going to like Galaxy's Edge and Starfighter.
This is not an episode about me at all, but I've written a big long sort of article about like Wave 1 of the High Republic that I've just got to put the finishing touches on, and that should be up. So yeah, go subscribe to my newsletter. I guess I've just started recently.
I'm sad that we're in this gap right now between phase 1 and phase 2.
That's why I sort of wanted
pretty
to take
consistent titles for a while, and I like really want more now. Like I'm like, give me more of my books. I don't wait till fall to read more.
I mean, it's
but
great.
in the meantime,
I've read all of it. But yes, coming in August before any new High Republic, we're gonna get to see this.
This artwork, I love this artwork.
It's very cool.
It's really fun. Like I didn't like obviously like I didn't get to see any of it until after I'd already written the book, but I got to see other books they had done in the same style for different like I was given a copy of Exploring Gotham City as a like sample of what they were looking for with it. So
it's very cool. So it's Studio MUTI, or is it Muti? Is it Mutti? Or is it
I
just
don't know
MUTI?
for sure actually.
No, okay.
I've only had it in writing from everybody, so I've been saying it as Muti, but that might be completely wrong. So
okay. We'll go with what you said. So Studio Muti. I'm guessing
they're South African based. I know that. So
okay, that's awesome. But I'm guessing not one specific artist, despite it having a consistent style. It's the house style of the studio, I presume.
I think so. Yeah.
How big is the book? Like, how many pages are we?
It's 44 pages. Most of them are about 2-page spreads like this. You would see a divide right down about the middle of that there. So yeah, that's basically the and then so each 2-page spread is one section. So like Mos Eisley has a few. I think there's like one for the actual city, one for just the cantina, and then one for the spaceport. And some things are. I tended to do a sort of like broad view of an area, and then I would zoom into something else, and then zoom into something else. And I was given free reign to do that.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I mean, it makes sense that you do. It was Tatooine for all the people that might go, "Oh, Tatooine again? Really? Why?" We've seen so much of Tatooine that there's room to be able to do a whole book on it. Like you couldn't do a whole book on many of these planets.
Yeah, I remember when I first wrote it, someone's like, "Okay, do Naboo next," and I'm like, "There's like maybe 3 things on Naboo you could probably,
3-4 places." I was like, "Okay, how deep into the palace and the reactor do you want me to go?" Like, there's.
I think Tatooine is the closest thing we have to like a home world in Star Wars.
Definitely.
So
definitely.
Which is funny because it's supposed to be,
but
remote.
Like that's my whole argument is it can still be like the sort of the like bumfuck nowhere of the galaxy, but that doesn't mean that it's not our focal point. It's us as an audience's focal point, because that's where we're first introduced to the films, the entire saga. We're first introduced to it on there, so we're always going to feel kind of at home on Tatooine. So
and I also feel like, okay, so this is obviously I'm biased now because I've written a whole book about Tatooine. So I essentially lived on Tatooine for months last year in my mind, and I think Tatooine is really beautifully metaphoric for the Star Wars story, because we first meet Tatooine as this backwater planet that shouldn't matter at all to the grand scheme of things. We're told by our protagonist that it's the furthest point from the bright center of the galaxy. Like that's how Tatooine is presented to us. But ultimately, Tatooine is one of the most important planets in the galaxy because it is the home of both Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. And it sets off the chain of events of A New Hope, Empire, and Jedi so well. And I think that is that is Star Wars in a nutshell, is that you have these young, scrappy rebels who are this like mismatched group of people who should not be able to take down this galactic empire, and they're able to do it. And that similarly, Tatooine is like that. Tatooine is this remote,
underdog,
unimportant
It
underdog
really
of
is.
a world that is extremely important. And then I also, when it comes to people being like, oh, why are there so many stories set on Tatooine or using Tatooine? I actually think I have a lot of thoughts about that. I think in character, you could say like that's the Force, like the Force is directing destiny through this like locale. But I also think that out of character, this is less like what's in the book for me, because like the book is written in universe. But I just believe as a writer and as a consumer of story, that story grows from other story. So Tatooine is important because we've been to Tatooine. Like that's kind of like a basic element, but Luke is on Tatooine in the beginning of A New Hope, right? So that's where it's set. Right. Then when we get to the prequel series, I think the reason why Anakin is also from Tatooine is that when George is writing the prequels and getting to the end, which he'd been doing for a long time at that point, and getting to the end, it's like, okay, why is Obi-Wan on Tatooine watching over Luke? Why Tatooine? And I think it was like, why is Tatooine the one planet that they figure that Darth Vader would never go randomly looking at ever again? And it's like, they know he would not want to return to Tatooine because it's so painful for him. And so that's why, like, how can we make Tatooine almost like taboo for Darth Vader personally?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And it's, you even put it, it's in one of these preview pages where you have a paragraph, I think, specifically about that. And I think it's pulled from the comics, but I don't know if in the comics they explicitly sort of say that. Yeah. But it is very much a case of like, Vader goes, well, shit, they hit him on Tatooine. Like, yeah. And it's almost like he appreciates the game of it. Yeah. He appreciates it. It's like game appreciates game, sort of like he goes, well, damn, Obi-Wan was smart in that he respects that play in the fact that hide them on Tatooine because he knows that I'm never going to want to go back there.
Yeah. And also, I mean, in the prequels, like we do have, like George knows that Luke has to go back there at some point. So he or in Obi-Wan, so he knows that, you know, Owen and Beru have to be on Tatooine. So it's like you have to have a way to connect them to Anakin. And then I think for Boba Fett moving forward and like Return of the Jedi, well, first of all, I think when George wrote A New Hope, he always intended, we know he always intended Jabba to be based on Tatooine because he has a deleted scene he always wanted to put back in, eventually did. So it's like, if you're going to write Jabba's palace, you have to put it where you already set it. And then I think with Boba Fett, it's like, well, if you're going to, if the story is going to be Boba Fett in this crime empire, why would you not put it on Tatooine, which is the last place we saw Boba Fett? So as much as it's like, oh, we see this all the time, I don't think there's any time we see it where it doesn't organically matter to the story or grow out of previous story nuggets. The only thing I think you could maybe make that argument for is the first Mandalorian appearance on Tatooine, because it's like, okay, well, why does he go to Tatooine except for, but that might be because they already knew what they wanted to do Boba Fett down the line, so they needed to bring Fennec Shand in there and things like that.
Very possible, yeah. And they had Amy Sedaris, and they were like, this would be a fun place, you know. Yeah. And I mean, as we've said all along, like Mandalorian, especially season 1, it's Favreau and Filoni playing with their action figures. Yeah, totally. And it's like them having a Docking Bay 94 play set and going, it's not 94 because that's a bit too on the nose. It's 35 or 35 or whatever it was. Like, let's just turn the camera left a little bit.
Yeah, and I think also, you know, if you're setting a story set 5 years after the last movie in that era, then I think it makes sense to go to the most familiar locations from that movie to go like, oh, look how different things are. Like, it's a very jarring image to see the streets of Mos Eisley and see stormtroopers' heads on spikes 100%. After we had previously seen them patrolling the city. We know
exactly what Tatooine looks like at each different point in time. Yeah. So it lands it right in that time frame. Like, we know just from a visual that this is a different time. This is that period of time.
Yeah. It's a big deal to go into Chalmun's Cantina and see droids working at the bar, considering last time we saw this cantina, droids weren't welcome in the space. So
yeah, it's showing it's a place. It's essentially a landmark, so people can see the sort of progression of how the state of the universe is. Yeah. another thing going back to Luke being hidden on Tatooine is, as far as we know, between episode 3 and episode 4, I've discussed this before, is Obi-Wan assumes that Anakin's dead. Anakin was left on the shores of a volcanic planet with his limbs cut off and on fire. So, you know, it wasn't a matter of, I don't think, like, he didn't know Vader was Anakin yet.
Out there hunting, yeah.
So they took Luke when he was just a tiny baby. This is where we're gonna go. He should be safe with
from the
Anakin's
Emperor.
family. Yeah. So you know,
I assume that's Obi-Wan's going to tackle a lot of that, like the series.
Yeah. So once Obi-Wan realizes that Anakin's alive and he's this Darth Vader person, and the shit's gonna really hit the fan, and he's gonna be on Tatooine watching over that kid extra hard.
Yeah.
It's tough because, you know, if anything goes down at the Lars homestead, it's very flat. There's no higher ground. It's gonna be a tough fight.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, do you think that's why they've put those like cliffs or something where he seems to be hanging out in a cave?
The binocular, look at the binocular.
Like in the slight distance that we don't know. Do you think that's why? Just so he's got a bit of a high ground.
Always have high ground. But I do like that Anakin was born on Tatooine, because it shows.
But he wasn't born there.
Lucas. Well, he was raised there, right? I don't. You know book stuff. I don't know book stuff.
No, I mean it's from the movie. I think he says that he was.
They used to belong to a different hut.
Gardola the hut. He was like,
it does say all my life.
He was brought there like 3-4 years. Like when he was.
But the thing I like about it is, and this is totally George, is he always says this is for kids, and so he showed the life of a kid on Tatooine becoming the hero, and then 20-something years later showed pretty much that same kid turning into the villain.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to show, have the same sort of groundwork or same foundation.
We all joke around and
go ahead.
We all joke around and the quote, it's like poetry, it rhymes. But there are times where that very much applies, and it's like, yeah, George, you're not wrong. It kind of is at times.
George had a great sense of story. I think that's like, no matter what you want to say about like individual writing, things like that, George knew story. And I think that knows story. I shouldn't talk about him in the past tense. He's still alive, still creating narrative.
Still does know story. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that even from A New Hope to Return of the Jedi, even aside from Jabba being on Tatooine already established, I think there's a big deal about Luke having left Tatooine at the beginning of A New Hope and saying, I'm never coming back here anyway, coming back in the third movie, and now he's becoming a Jedi Knight. And it's even so much as he was dressed in all white when he left, he's dressed in all black now. He's like coming to his own power. He's confident. He's a little arrogant. Like there's a lot happening with Luke compared to this kind of like whiny kid who just wanted to get away. Now he's like standing for something and part of something, and
he's super arrogant during the rescue. Like
he literally salutes the thing.
Absolutely, like through the conversation. Like I mean, he's humbled a little bit when he goes into the.
I love it.
Yeah. What's more confident than arrogant.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
there's a little bit of. I think I believe in the through line of Luke Skywalker, so I think even Luke eventually says he was pretty arrogant and cocky. So I
would agree. Yeah,
yeah.
Can you imagine Darth Vader setting down on Tatooine? If he shows up in Obi-Wan on Tatooine, that's a huge deal.
Read some comics, dude. Like
if they are going with comics and keeping comics canon, which they might not, because the comics do have like a whole Journal of Obi-Wan thing where he seems to never leave. There's a section just prior to A New Hope where he is sent by maybe it's after A New Hope.
I think it's after.
I think it's after. He is sent by Palpatine to Tatooine to talk to Jabba the Hutt, and he just hates every second of it. Like he hates everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it is just after.
Yeah, it would be, because it's all set after that. Yeah. So it's before he knows Luke is Luke. So he doesn't know that there's like he doesn't know to go look at the Lars farm like that yet.
He goes, and that's where he hires Boba Fett and Chrysanthemum, I believe. Yeah, it's from there, basically.
Yeah.
Does he run into his mom's grave?
Well, he doesn't know yet that. I think he goes to his mom's grave, but he doesn't know yet that. I'm trying to think of the order of events of what happens, because I know he goes with this. I should know. I wrote this whole book about it. The problem is he goes a couple of times, so I'm getting which time he goes. I think he goes to the Lars farm after. I think he goes in the run that's after Empire Strikes Back, because he goes back and he's essentially saying, like, somebody made my son weak, because he's like angry that Luke rejects him in Empire Strikes Back, and he decides that somebody made his son weak, and he wants to find out who that was and get his vengeance on them, and then he goes to
the homestead
Tatooine again. Yeah.
I can't remember this.
But I think he goes with Afra to
it's comics, dude. Comics. You read comics.
I know.
He goes to Afra he goes to the Obi-Wan hut with Afra, and then he goes later to there's a whole lot.
Yeah. But I mean,
I have a lot of timelines in my head from Tatooine.
Him going back to Jabba's palace is even like a callback to the Clone Wars movie, where like him and Ahsoka went to the palace with Stinky. You know, so it's like he's been there before.
That's why I got to put Ahsoka in my book.
He's dealt exactly. That's great having that Ahsoka moment in your book, because like that happens too. Ahsoka's been there. Everyone who's important has been there.
Yeah, Ventress has been there. Yeah,
yeah, of course.
Cad Bane had been there already.
Yeah. I was guessing that you wrote the Cad Bane thing in here before you even knew the fate. Before
I knew his fate. Yeah. So I got that, I had that little bit of Fennec and Obi-Wan, Fennec and I keep saying Obi-Wan, Fennec and Boba Fett from the end of Mandalorian. It's in there, but
it's great.
Yeah. I do not have an explanation as to why the Lars family didn't change Luke's surname. I think it's just because it was already Luke in A New Hope, and I think it's kind of hard to go back and retcon that away. So I think that's just one of those things you have to expect to let go.
I chalked that up to Obi-Wan assuming Anakin's dead.
Yeah.
So
that's fair. Yeah, I don't know. I'm on the fence about whether or not he thinks Anakin's dead or not. I think he thinks he is, but I think we'll get a definitive answer when the show comes out.
I've always sort of thought that he's in the back of his mind, he sort of maybe had an inkling that he wasn't, but he really was trying to convince himself that he was.
I think he thinks he's dead, but he's hedging his bets just in case.
Yeah.
Do they say Darth Vader in the recording in episode 3? When Obi-Wan and them are looking at the hologram of the replay, it doesn't say Darth Vader. Okay, so that's going to be super exciting, because that's gonna rival the Ahsoka Vader fight in Rebels, as far as them fighting and then her realizing through the fight.
I'm hoping the series is almost essentially doing what I would have done if I had been writing episode 3, because I always wanted it to be that Obi-Wan was hunting down this Darth Vader character and then finds out Darth Vader is Anakin. He thinks Darth Vader has killed Anakin, and then he finds Anakin and learns that it's Darth Vader. So I guess, he obviously knows Darth Vader is Anakin in A New Hope, even if we don't have the series. So the series might justify why he knows that, but at least in the current timeline before the series exists, at some point he figured out Darth Vader and Anakin were the same person, because he says like Darth Vader betrayed and killed your father, and that's how he defends himself for it. So
yeah.
But I think my theory is that the explanation for why whatever happens in the show is going to happen is it's going to be based on when Vader says to Luke in Return of the Jedi, Obi-Wan once thought as you did, which is, I think, once Obi-Wan figures out that Darth Vader is Anakin, he's going to try one more time to convince him to turn back.
He believes that there is still the good in him, that he doesn't need to be evil. Yeah, that's great. I'd love to see that moment.
Yeah.
Okay. If you were to do a second book, and you don't have to say anything, what planet would you like to tackle? You don't have to say anything.
Comment.
But can I say this? I mean, this is what I'm essentially getting at, and this always rears its head, is I would absolutely love an Endor book, and listeners and viewers know why, is because I need more Ewok adventures in canon.
Push it through.
So I can't say more. I'm sorry. I have things that I have said to my editor that I would like to do, but I don't know if they'll ever happen, and I don't want to say what I would want to do in case that would like mess something up. But
it's sort of tough, because like reading the pages, I'm like, oh well, yeah, this is great, because so much stuff takes place on Tatooine. I don't know if you could do the same with any other planet, because even if it's like Hoth,
not
like,
to this level, I don't think. No.
Yeah.
Even Coruscant, I feel like Coruscant, you would get maybe about 4 or 5 spreads, but you wouldn't get 22 like you do at Tatooine.
It'd be Clone Wars heavy. But like Endor's in 4 movies.
Yeah.
Endor's in 4 movies, so just saying.
How many canon movies though?
Yeah, well, that's it. It is interesting. There are planets that we've seen a bunch of, if you include the animated series, if you include all the comics and things like that. And a book like this is a great way of bringing people that haven't read the comics some of this information. But it's also a case of, you want it to be recognizable. You want most of the locations to be recognizable, and then you're filling in extra details. I'm assuming
that's what was so fun about this. It was so fun to take a spot that, like, I think a great example, we talk about Kenobi's home.
Sure.
A lot of people know that Luke is brought there by Obi-Wan after he's attacked by the Tuskens, and like that's where he learns about this. Like, a lot of people don't know that Luke fought Boba Fett there. A lot of people don't know that Darth Vader brought Dr. Aphra there, and so having those things put in there is really fun. I think that a lot of people don't know about the times that Darth Vader returned to Lars homestead. People don't know about, some people who don't watch the cartoons don't really know about
dots.
It's like
this is geared right to me.
Absolutely.
It really is.
It was geared to me. It was fun to write it because it was fun to go, wow, I'm putting all these little adventures together in one spread.
It's super cool. I can't wait to read it. And it's also it's scratching that itch of both an incredible cross sections and a visual dictionary at the same time. Both of those are obviously, I think the cross sections feel a little bit more in universe, but the visual dictionaries are a little bit more like behind the scenesy, like, or not behind the scenes, but like it's this blaster from this planet, from like manufactured by this company and things like that. It's a bit just textbooky.
And I try to avoid using those because first of all, they've already been published. Somebody else already did them,
they're out there.
Take somebody else's thing. So a lot of what I do, there's a couple of those because there are some things that are interesting. Like there's a little, like you can see it, for example, on the most likely spaceport page. I described Razor Crest a little bit. Like here's kind of some of the things that it has with it, but
you're not going into like the manufacturers and the things like that. You're just sort of, you make reference to it being, it's an older class ship and things like that, but it serves all the purpose that Mando needs.
Yeah, and the book is directed towards children, so I think that's one reason why it's not as dry and like tech heavy, because it's designed to be like, hey, there's a fun story that happens here, and
it's also directed towards 45-year-old guys.
100%.
But it's what's funny. It's perfect because here's the thing. Like, I like looking at the cross section books. I like looking at the visual dictionaries and all of that stuff. But this is perfect for me because I don't have to read all the technical jargon. I get to get little glimpses into all these little stories I've been missing, and it's gonna make me want to read more Aphra. It's gonna make me want to see Luke versus. So it's almost like it's geared towards me to sort of wet my whistle and actually start diving into some of this stuff.
So that's my other question is there a glossary in this book of like where things are from, where things are pulled from?
If there is, that's not something that I did. That might be something that the publisher added on to. So that kind of thing would be more like layout and editorial stuff and not writerly stuff. So that might be a thing. I don't know for sure.
I'm going to assume probably not. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to assume probably not. But it's like, as Ralph said, he's got Google. It's like if he's interested in what issue of a Star Wars comic did Luke fight Obi-Wan fight Boba Fett in Obi-Wan's home. Like,
well, I will tell you that because I like. Wikipedia is a great resource for that because if you go look up like when those events happened, usually like they have a really good that was a lifesaver when writing this book of being able to like look up a section and then go featured in, and it has like a list of every episode of Clone Wars that used it, every comic that used it, like it. Because then I'll go to my editor and go, hey, can you pull these comics for me so I can use them? And things
I was going to say, and then like obviously because Wikipedia is an unofficial source, like you can pull everything from there because 99% of the time it's going to be accurate. But then anything that Lucasfilm aren't 100% behind, they're going to flag on. Like,
it was more of a tool to find directions towards references than it was actually like. But I'm saying like if you are looking up a section and you're like, oh, like if you look up Ben Kenobi's hut, you're gonna find every time it's been referenced in official canon sources and stuff like that. So
that's great. That's great.
All right, I think I'm out of questions.
I think you answered more than enough.
The chat is just Chris and my wife talking about me being half Ewok.
Fair.
So let's do some plugs. Let's is the book available for pre-order yet?
Yes, you can find it on pre-order. I have a link on my website, which is RileySilverman.com. I have a book page, and it has the book, like a little snippet from the StarWars.com article about it, has the cover on it, and it has links to some major booksellers. And there's also, if you're in the US, there's a great website called bookshop.org. And bookshop.org is a way that you can pre-order online from your local bookstore. I think you order from the shop, but your local bookstore gets the like sale credit for it. You can also go to or call your family local bookstore and pre-order from them directly, which I recommend doing as well. But there are also the major online retailers, your Amazons, your Barnes & Noble, links on there as well. So, whatever's the best way for you to do it, but I always support indie bookstores.
Just to support the people over here in the UK, I have just checked, it is available to pre-order in the UK as well. So I'm sure if you go to a bookstore, you can do it exactly the same way, but if not, major booksellers online available.
Yeah, which makes sense. Actually, the funniest thing about it was listed on Amazon in like October, November, and I couldn't talk about it because like Amazon just, when they get books listings, they just put them up. It's like a thing. I've had several friends who have been in situations where they can't talk about a thing they have an NDA for, but it's on Amazon. And now I lived out myself. And I actually had a friend message me about a month ago to be like, hey, did you write a Star Wars book? And I'm like, I can't talk about it.
Nope. Nope. Not yet. I haven't.
Nope.
That's great.
So a little bit of business for the show. Last episode, I was supposed to have a pick for our next regular episode, which is in a week. And I have one. And I figured we since we have a little less time, because we do our regular shows every other week, Riley, and then the data link is a way for us to not just talk about things in live action Star Wars, because we're going to run out of stuff to talk about if we do it
and
weekly.
We like other things.
Yeah, we like so I'm making it easy on everybody, and since we're getting close to Obi-Wan season, next week we are going to be reviewing the Duel of the Fates music video that was aired in 1999 on MTV.
I remember that.
The whole episode's going to be, wasn't that nuts?
At that time I was
orchestral music on MTV.
I was a junior in high school, and I was in my like TV production class, and I put the entire video up at the end of an episode of our morning announcements. Amazing. So everyone was like watching the announcements, and then we put that up at the very end. Yeah, it was great.
That's great.
It's we're going to get into a deep dive. We're going to be joined by a guest, Chrysanthi Tan, who I think is perfect.
Yeah, I did their music of the Star Wars podcast, right? Like, I was funny because they asked me to do it, and I actually like messaged my editor like, hey, can I do this kind of stuff? I'm like, yes, please do. But I couldn't talk about the book yet because it wasn't announced yet. And I almost told them like, can I wait? But
I was on their podcast yesterday.
Nice.
And that's going to air on Friday, I believe.
Oh, that's
that
cool.
podcast is so fun.
So
they know so much stuff about sound effects and music. It's impressive.
Right. And I'm a huge film score nerd. And so just talking about it, super exciting. So it's
one of those things where it's like we all enjoyed the music of Star Wars. We all feel like in most conversations, we're going to be able to talk about the music of Star Wars to a level more than like regular people, but
they take it.
Chrysanthi takes it to a whole nother level. It's like makes us all feel stupid.
It was such a joy to be on that show because I'm not normally sound effect and music oriented. Like it's one of the things where I don't know. It's like that comment of like I don't know what art is, but I know what I like. Like it's that kind of thing. So to have somebody who has this wealth of knowledge about a thing that is part of my favorite thing that I've never fully appreciated before. It was so wonderful to literally hear about Star Wars in a nerd geek out kind of way about a topic that I've never really dove that deep into myself, and it was like so fun to like see Star Wars, or I should say it was fun to hear Star Wars from different ears, because it was like getting delightfully schooled,
super highly educated ears on a particular thing. Yeah,
but not like in a condescending way. Like they know their stuff and they're so excited to share it with you. Yeah, major props to that podcast, and have fun listening to it.
We talk about the Valacord because it's mentioned in the minutes that I was covering.
Awesome.
And they posted a picture of it, and I am now in love with the Valacord, and I want a real Valacord to be created.
Half my minutes had no music, so it was very fun talking about like instead like sound design. Like I was on a Death Star point, and it's when Luke is trying to convince Han to help him go rescue Leia, so there's lots of like weird random background like Death Star things.
We just talked about that scene last week on our bloopers episode.
Oh, nice. I actually, the night before my book was announced, and I was like, this is the last time in my life that I will be a casual Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
And as of tomorrow, I've already been a Star Wars professional for the last year, but not publicly.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this is my last night where I can just kind of publicly be a fan. From now on, I'm always going to have that little bit of a copy of like, well, I write, so I can't talk. So I sat and I poured myself a glass of champagne, and I just rewatched A New Hope, and it was like glorious. It was like the best. It was just like, let me just have this for myself.
Yeah.
I took the sound effects from that scene. I took the sound effects from that scene for the intro of Data Link. So that's what
that was a funky. I love that intro. Was great. I was like rocking out to it.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it so much.
It's new. And James, you might be excited to know that our end credits are now Data Link centric and new.
Love it. Brilliant.
So before we get to that though, thank you everybody in the chat for joining us. Had a blast. Riley, thank you so much for coming on. Look forward to the book. I'm probably going to go pre-order it now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll read the words and everything. I promise. In the meantime, go to liveactionstarwars.com. That's our YouTube channel, or go to Live Action SW. That is our website. And then follow us at Live Action SW.
Everywhere. And share the episode with all your friends and all that regular stuff.
Buy the book.
Definitely buy the book. Pre-order it. Go to nice local friendly bookstore if you can.
It's a great book to give as gifts for kids or anyone else who think might appreciate it.
All ages. We love all ages.
Yeah, it's an all ages book. So and actually that was the fun thing about writing it, is I'm not used to writing for younger audiences, because I usually write for websites and stuff.
Yeah, sure.
So that was like one of my few notes that I got was like, can you not make the language so like not adult, like it wasn't dirty.
Yeah.
I'm very wordy.
Accessible.
And I'm very I use complicated like
pretend Ralph's reading it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right for Ralph. There you go. That's R for R.
All righty.
All right. Until next week, don't give it to hate.
Celebrate the love.
Punch it.